Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, everyone. My name is Kamal, and I'll be taking us through today. So, first of all, a warm welcome to everyone gathered here today to celebrate the life of His Grace Jankinath Prabhu. So, I didn't know Jankinath Prabhu as long as many of the people here, but even due to my short time with him, he left a really deep and profound impact on me. And many of his teachings I carry through even to this day. So before we begin, I've just been asked if any of our younger guests would like to sit at the floor, because we might be a bit short on space earlier. So if some people can come, if they don't mind, to sit on the floor at the front, that would be brilliant. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to quickly run through the schedule for today. So we'll first have a short video on Jankinath Prabhu. We'll then hear from His Holiness Chandramauli Maharaj. And we'll then hear from a few other devotees who've got some fond memories to share of Jankinath Prabhu and their time with him. We'll conclude with a final video, and Dinanath Gauranga Prabhu will speak to us a little bit about some books and related to Jankinath Prabhu. And we'll try and close by around 6:30, at which point prasadam will be served. So, sorry, and could we have a round of applause for the Kirtanias? So are we ready for the video now? Hare Krishna.
Well, lovely to be down at the castle today, seeing how they're being moved, and to have a go at moving the house, which was super fun and brought back old memories of not being go every day. But lovely smell of good area, beautiful house, big house.
No, that's absolutely amazing. I mean, at the time, I used to go to the college to get milk in the morning. It's in the morning, and I was not midnight. That's really green, blue, red.
Hare Krishna. Give it another announcement today. So, for those of you who don't know, that was a video showing one of the retreats that Jankinath Prabhu did for cancer patients after, obviously, he was diagnosed. And for me, when I first heard that he was doing this was just so amazing to me, but also really showed me this is a true mark of a real devotee, and that they're able to transform something bad that happens to them into something positive, not just for themselves, but for the betterment of others as well. So just something really, really amazing that he'd done for so many people there, even during his final moments of his life. So it really just showed to me the true depth of character that Jankinath Prabhu had. So at this stage, I'd like to call His Holiness Chandramauli Maharaj to say some words on the life of Jankinath Prabhu. So could we please both raise both your hands, and in traditional manner, when we greet Maharaj with 3 loud Hari Bols. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Om Gyan Timidandasya Ganajana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Om Vishnu Badaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Pasyatya De Satarine Vanshakalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bhaja Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. His Grace Jankinath Prabhu ki jai. Just to add something what Kamala had mentioned about the video, there was about 35 people that attended that retreat. Most of them were cancer patients, and there was a few doctors and some, what we say, hospital staff that also came. Not only did he inspire the patients to come, but even the hospital staff to come. And the most amazing thing was, amazing in the sense that it was so beneficial because many, I don't know how many, but many of those persons later were no longer here. That was one of the last things that they experienced in their life. And it was one of the things that they had never experienced before. Coming to our temple, getting to meet the devotees, take part in spiritual activities, and having a wonderful spiritual experience. And you can see, we all saw on that video how happy they were. They were like kids who were just enjoying themselves to the fullest extent. But the thing that was so wonderful is that many of them, after that time, were no longer here. So, and what he really did was unique, phenomenal, and as Kamala said, really showed the depth of his character. He cared about people. When I used to go to see him in the hospital, he would introduce me to some of his fellow patients, and he would tell me their names, a little bit about their background, and he would bring me over to them, and then I would spend some time with them. And even when they were talking about themselves, they would take time to speak about this person who they met that was so kind and so, what we say, amazing. One of the qualities that I always saw Jankinath do, and it's a rare quality and it's a beautiful quality. The word is affable. I think that's the word. He could speak to anyone, anytime, anywhere, and that person would always feel comfortable or never intruded upon. I saw that so many times. We'd be traveling in airports and we'd be going to the check-in for our flights, and he would see the person behind the counter and he would say, "Are you stressed out?" And the guy would say many times, "Yeah." He said, "Well, we have something for you." And then he would give them this app about the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and they would immediately accept it. And I was thinking, I could never do that. But he had that quality that he could enter into a person's life in such a way, even people he never saw before, didn't know him, and simply become their friend within a second. It's a rare quality. And the quality really is indicated of his really deeper quality. He's non-envious. The devotees would always tell me that when I would meet the brahmacharis. Everyone says, Jankinath, he has not even a drop of envy. And, I never considered it at the time, but when the devotees kept telling me, and then I was starting to notice it. And that was the kind of quality that he could, communicate with people. He never tried to use people for his own, what we say, personal enjoyment. He was always giving, in the mood of giving. Of course, he would do it in different ways according to his, what we say, diverse and flamboyant character. He could be very sweet and very quiet and very serious, and at other times he was explosive with happiness. He was a dynamo with many diverse qualities, but all very attractive and all very beneficial to everyone he came in contact with. When we first met, I can remember how we met was in 2009. I had came to the manor, and I needed someone to drive me around to go to the different places for preaching. So they sent this young boy. I didn't know who he was. I thought, he looks too young to drive. But he convinced me he was okay. And the first time we went out and we were driving on the motorway and he was doing 100 miles an hour. This was like a Sunday morning when usually the police are more available. So at one point I said, I think you should slow down. And immediately he did. And about a few moments later, we just passed the police officers. But this was my first experience with him. So things started off quite interesting. You may say, in one sense, kind of dynamic. And at that time, he would always ask me, should I get married or should I join the ashram? He was kind of going through his struggle for direction in life. I said, you should join the ashram for at least 2 years and then see. After that experience, then you can decide if you want to move on or continue. And he took it. It took a little bit while to convince him, but when he was convinced, he dove right into it. And when he was in the ashram, he was like the life of the ashram. And I would always get reports. And then every once in a while, I'd have to travel. And he would always get some permission to leave the ashram and go with me. So, and I was inclined because I really became attracted to his nature. I thought he's the person I want to be with. And then, but his whole thing was, I could see he had so many outstanding qualities that he could do so much to spread Krishna consciousness. But he only wanted to stay with me and do personal service. And I accepted that, but then I realized, I'm limiting him. He can do much more. He has so much potential. He's a very personal person with everybody. And he also was reading the books a lot, so he was learning the philosophy, and also whenever he get a chance, speak. So I thought, and then I had to push him away. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because there was no one to replace him. But at the same time, I thought this would be the way he could actually serve the mission of Lord Chaitanya. And when I did, after some time, at first he didn't want to. He wanted just to stay as my assistant. But I thought, no, he's got something in the future that would be glorious in his life. And so when I pushed him away, finally he got the idea. And then he started to preach, and not only preach, but develop many, many programs that were quite unique. K.C. Sak was one of his also brain programs. Going to, be a monk for a day. And other programs to attract the young people, mostly university students and other young people, to Krishna consciousness. So he became really very innovative in preaching and bringing people into Krishna consciousness. And then I saw something wonderful. And then in our relationship, I would always ask him, well, how's your preaching going? And he would always take time. And so it was different. I learned so much from him in the way that how he dealt with people in a way that is unique. I don't think anyone could copy him or try to emulate him. He had these qualities that were so deep in personal relationships that you can see it. We saw it on this series of photos of him growing up, and then how he took that same innocent, childlike mood, but in a more developed way, into the process of Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada also said that to practice Krishna consciousness means to be childlike. Not childish, but childlike. Innocent. And he had that innocence about him, but at the same time, something that was very deep in his understanding of the process of Krishna consciousness. One time, this is how his apparent mistakes turns into something wonderful. He could make a mistake, and then it turned out that because he made a mistake, it was the best thing. So we were in America, and we were in Detroit, and we had to take a flight, and we had to go to Hartford, Connecticut. It was a connecting flight also, it wasn't direct. So we were doing programs every night, and this was the last day. So I came to him in the morning. I said, well, what time is our flight for leaving, Detroit? He said 9:11. I said, airlines don't give that kind of time for departure. He said, no, 9:11. So I said, all right. So then I get a little bit concerned, thinking maybe he's wrong. So I asked him again. He said, no, it's 9:11. All right. So I wasn't in the mood to really go into it. So when we got to the airport, they said, your flight's already left. 9:11 is your arrival time. So it was myself and Jankinath and Shiv, the three of us. So they were thinking how to get us on some flight to get to, Hartford. So there was one flight coming up, but there was only room for one person. and there was 3 of us. So they all said, well, you have to go, Mars, because you're giving the class. I said, all right. But they said, but I was praying, maybe if somebody doesn't show up for the flight or something will happen, we'll all get on. I sat in my seat and then I see both of them walking on the plane. So we're on the plane and then we landed into our, first destination. We were waiting there to change planes to take our final. And in the airport, we must have distributed about 10 books, flyers, Maha Mantra cards, and met so many people and talked about Krishna consciousness. I said, wow, Jankinath, your mistakes are great. We just turned the whole thing into a very successful preaching program. And even though we came late for our program, actually, we weren't late. We were late according to our arrival time, but we weren't late for the program. Everything worked out for the best that day. So I was thinking, he doesn't make mistakes, but it seems like it. And so these are some of the experiences I had with him. I learned so much about his determination. He had such determination. When he took up book distribution, he was always one of the top book distributors. Every day he would send me his scores, and he would do over 100 Bhagavad Gitas every day. Over 100 Bhagavad Gitas I mean, he really, really, really put his heart into distributing books. And he always wanted to do more and more and more and more when it came to book distribution. And I was really thinking that Srila Prabhupada is bestowing so much mercy on him. As Prabhupada gave his heart in terms of the instructions he gave us, distribute my books. If you distribute my books, you will please me very, very much. Because that was Srila Prabhupada's instruction from his spiritual master. If you ever get money, print books, distribute books. Books of the Brihat Mridanga. Books can go everywhere and anywhere. People cannot always go where the books go. So, and Prabhupada emphasized that. And when he got a taste for book distribution, it was really phenomenal. And he really developed it so nicely and so wonderfully. Of course, he always acted as a disciple, always very humble. But I remember one time I told him, open my suitcase. I need to get something out of it. And I told him what to get out of it. And I was on my way to India. And so he did. And then he gave me the item. And he relocked it, but didn't give me the keys. And then I left. And when I got to India, I had the suitcase, but I couldn't open it. And it was one of these suitcases where you couldn't break it. It wasn't breakable. It didn't have that kind of lock where you could break. And so what he did, he went all the way to the airlines and arranged for some special courier to send the keys to me directly. He went out of his way to get those keys. And even though I was a little bit late, still, it wasn't an inconvenience. Somehow or other, he was determined to somehow or other get those keys to me. And he did it in such an effective way. He talked to people. They said, we don't do that. We don't send keys overseas, But he convinced them. And it worked. He went to the airlines, not through any other agency. So we had so many wonderful times together. And one of the things that really went deep into my heart and my experience with him, every time I was with him, I always would feel so happy. I was thinking, just being with him, even though he makes mistakes, but his mistakes are like so sweet and so innocent. It's just like he used to do so many things at once and maybe forget some of the little things. And I always used to tell him, you know, a devotee is attentive to details, you know. He would say, well, I'm attentive, but you know what details? I don't know about details. He couldn't get into details. And so, but my experience was when we were away and he would come and all of a sudden we were together, I would always feel like, wow, just being in his presence was such sad. I was just so happy. I was just so satisfied. I was thinking, just wow, I want to spend time with him. And he was always so humble around me. But when he was out there preaching, he was like a sweet lion. Sweet, he never lost his sweetness, and that was really entered people's heart. He could, I think, all of us can had some experience that when he was with you, you know, it didn't matter what he did, just the fact that he was there. That's all that counted. And I had a really profound experience. We were together in America, in Charlotte, North Carolina. And he had to go back early to do some preaching, some programs he had lined up. And I was meant to stay there for some time. So he was leaving that day. And he was packing. And I was thinking, oh, I'm losing his association. And then I wrote this also in my final letter to him, that when he was walking out the door, I was practically crying. I mean, really, I was thinking, this person is so special. He is so special. And now he's leaving me. He wasn't even gone, but he was leaving. And I was thinking, I'm really already feeling separation from him. It was like that. He could just somehow or other get into your life in such a way that he just touched you in different places, your heart, your mind, and all of the things about you that made his relationship with you so very satisfying. That was Jankinath. Yeah, we're celebrating, honoring his disappearance. Of course, we understand that for us, it's a moment of sadness, it's a moment of loss. But the way he left the world, and we have Radha Damodar Prabhu here, he was there at the last moments when Janaki Prabhu left the world. He describes in a very beautiful letter those last moments, and it was like, I can remember some of the letter. Although he was struggling with pain and suffering in the very last moment, all of a sudden, he sat in a lotus position, and with eyes closed, he simply went into like internal consciousness. And with a smile on his face, right? It was a smile, yes? He left the world. That's how he left. It was so beautiful. And Radha Damodar Prabhu later wrote to his spiritual master, His Holiness Shiva Ram Maharaj. And Shiva Ram Maharaj wrote something really beautiful. Of course, he didn't know too much about Jankinath. He had hardly had contact with him, but he said, I can understand from what you described. He came to do something and now his time was up. And now it was time for him to leave. In other words, he had some mission here. And now he had completed his time and now he was going back to Krishna. You know, we always say, well, everyone who leaves is going back to the spiritual world. But I can say, in this sense, there's no doubt. There's no doubt, because he had all of the qualities it takes to actually, what is a real Vaishnava? A real Vaishnava is paradukkha dukhi. He's only concerned about the welfare of others, and he lived that way. He neglected himself and that's usually the case with people who are concerned about others. They don't think so much of themselves, but he really neglected himself, simply to give himself to others. And as he was struggling in those last days, or even not even last days, but those last years with all of his different bouts of cancer, he was always positive. He didn't want us to really feel bad about him. He wanted to say that, whatever's happening, this is Krishna's arrangement. And he stayed steady in his service. And and anyone who was around him, when you're around someone who's sick and is struggling, it's not a very pleasant mood, but just to be with him was pleasant. Because he pushed that in the background. It was about you and him, that's all. His qualities, his character, his activities, everything was very, very special. And, at first, when I first met him, I didn't see all of that. But then as time went on, it became quite evident. And here's Krishna sent me somebody special. And I was grateful for that. I was grateful to have the opportunity to associate with him. Although I played the role of his spiritual master, I think I learned more from him than I was able to offer to him. I can honestly say that because his character was so beautiful and unassuming, completely unassuming, non-judgmental, didn't have time to hear the faults of others, never spoke about anybody's faults. Now, this is a rare, very rare quality, and it's actually the quality of a true Vaishnava. So I want to read His Holiness Swayam Bhagavad Keshava Maharaj. We invited him to come, but he had another program. He could not get out of it. So I want to read something that he wrote about Jankinath. It's about one full page and a little over. But I think it's worth reading because they had such a close relationship, really beautiful. And it begins by the monk who loved life. How many people can say they love life? How many jump out of bed inspired and enthused on a mission that has captured their imagination? How many people are so driven that no amount of complexity or challenge could deflate them? Jankinath Das, a.k.a. JD, was a rare soul who exhibited such hunger for life. He was a modern-day saint, an urban monk. You'd spot him in a baseball cap practicing new magic tricks, utilizing technology, and communicating profound spiritual truths through the lingo of the ghetto. JD was a powerhouse of spiritual entity, buzzing and bouncing from one mission to the next, conquering hearts with his simple smile and soft heart. His character exuded saintliness, tolerance, compassion, friendliness to all, without enemies, and always peaceful. A childlike innocence that you could not imitate. No time to criticize or complain, always progressive, always positive. For him, life was a perpetual adventure. He took up spiritual life, became a monk, and traveled the world with his backpack. It was an adventure. Later, when he was diagnosed with cancer, it was another adventure. When he was told he had 3 months to live, it was another adventure. When we talked about the arrangements for his own funeral, it was another adventure. In his final days, a medical opportunity arose. Boom, he said, let's do it. It was an adventure, the last one of his life. JD left the world on the battlefield, embracing an unlikely prospect to turn his health around. He wanted to extend his time, not because he was scared of death, but because he was in love with life. Every moment was valuable because it brought beautiful opportunities to serve others. JD loved life because he knew how to live life. When people struggled, he never judged them, ignored them, or remained indifferent, but rather extended a loving, helping hand. We have arguments. I make the right managerial decisions, but he make the decisions which empowered, enthused, elevated, and encouraged others. He showed me how a spiritualist could also be a human. When there was an opportunity to serve, he was never lazy, apathetic, or hesitant. He rolled up his sleeve and got stuck in, whatever the task. He knew the secret. He was a giver. His life was hijacked by acute obstacles, but he responded with grace, resilience, and inspired positivity. Those obstacles went from bad to worse to unthinkable. Month after month, year after year, the violent and aggressive reversals increased in intensity. 30 pills a day, restless cycles of chemo, endless nights alone in the hospital, loss of voice, physical incapacitation, and inability to perform the most fundamental human functions. How such experience can destroy someone. The heat kept rising, but JD's spirit outgrew it, absorbing everything in life with the fire of his devotion. The last human freedom is the freedom to remain enthusiastic about life. He was a shining example for all. He loved life because he knew how to live life. JD wasn't just positive, but spiritually deep as well. He had implanted the most profound aspirations within his heart and was aiming for the North Star for spiritual perfection. Before the world went into lockdown, he made one last trip to Vrindavan, the most holiest of places. There he connected with the sweetness of transcendence. And when he came back, knew where he was aiming. He has intensified this divine meditation with his final breath. I foolishly underestimated him. Oh, JD, who was always amazing. Maybe now you're buzzing with the bees in the divine playground of God known as Goloka Vrindavan. Perhaps you're buzzing somewhere else in this universe, banging the drum in the electrifying movement of Sri Chaitanya Dev, cooking up a spiritual revolution of love. JD, my friend, you were miles ahead. You did it. I'm so happy for you. Hopefully we'll meet again for some more spiritual adventures. And this time I'll follow you so that I can learn to love like just as you did. That was from Maharaj. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jankinath, Jankinath Prabhu ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj. So I was thinking about what Maharaj was saying, and one thing that stood out to me was how personable Jankinath Prabhu was. And Maharaj alluded to this, but that he wasn't just a good teacher, a good preacher, but because of he was so personal with people, he was a brilliant cultivator. And one of those people who he cultivated was actually me. And so I've written a short tribute for him. With your permission, I can share. So I call this a living example. I first saw Jankinath Prabhu in 2015. Just starting my journey in Krishna consciousness, I was the newcomer on the scene. I was looking for a mentor, but having started relatively late, I didn't know any devotees from the manor or whose advice to take. As I looked through the list of mentors, there was a recognizable face I could see. Although we'd never spoken before, Jankinath would always smile and greet me. With his customary fist bump, an infectious smile, at least a brief acknowledgement. For him, it was worthwhile. In those early days, I felt quite alone and unsure if this was the path for me. But thanks to Jankinath's kindness and warmth, I finally felt seen. His first question, do I know you? Of course, my answer was no. But after telling him a little bit about myself, we instantly clicked, and from there we did go. He was almost exactly the same age as me, but infinitely wiser, thanks to his absorption in Krishna consciousness that he dedicated his life for. We'd meet every week or so, and he'd patiently answer all my questions, or kindly guiding me regarding culture and etiquette. His enthusiasm was infectious. On occasion, he'd tell me, meet me in the Mayapur room, but don't tell anyone I'm here. So I'd covertly seek him out and realizations we would share. It was then I realized Jankinath was extremely popular. He couldn't walk around the temple more than a few meters before people would stop him. Sometimes I would just observe him and his interactions and the way he spoke. Soon it became very clear this wasn't an ordinary person we were talking about. On the outside, to everyone you met, so jovial and kind, but treating Krishna consciousness with the utmost seriousness, you were grave on the inside. I could see you looked visibly upset whenever a devotee was criticized, and you avoided idle conversations, discreetly walking off to the side. After a year, I wanted you to sign off my sadhana sheet. You humbly replied, Kamal, I'm not qualified to be your mentor. We're just friends who sometimes meet. The truth is, you're more than qualified. An effulgent guiding light. I guess back then I didn't really appreciate how much of a blessing you were in my life. After I moved into the manor, your illness had taken hold. I felt so powerless and dejected after the news was told. Yet you remained stalwart. Even in these circumstances, you saw Krishna's mercy. And when I had my own health issues, insignificant compared to yours, you empathized, you offered help, you expressed concern. This was so humbling to me. Thank you for seeing me when I felt lonely and invisible. Thank you for uplifting me when I felt unenthusiastic and so minuscule. Thank you for correcting me in a kind and tolerant way. You were smart enough to realize harshness can drive people away. Thank you for giving me so much of your precious time and being so tolerant of my uncultured ways and endless mistakes of mine. I'll always miss you, my very dear friend, but thanks to you and your guidance, there's a chance I'll make it to Krishna and see you again. His Grace Jankinath Prabhu ki. Jai. Hare Krishna. So, just looking out in the crowd here, I believe we're waiting for a devotee called Baladev Prabhu. He's yet to arrive. So, at this moment, I'd like to call His Grace Jankinath Prabhu to say a few words.
When I think about Jankinath, I can never forget in 2005 when we were sitting on an aeroplane and I just somehow got the opportunity to sit next to him. We were on the way to Germany for a trip, for a Pandasena trip, and I sat next to him and I just thought to myself, wow, who am I speaking to? This kind of electric, buzzing, kind of can't stay in one place kind of guy. And I was really impressed. And at the same time, kind of jealous because he was talking more to the person on the other side. And then in 2007, I was in Chowpatty I was in the guest room before going to the ashram. And in the middle of the night, at 2 in the morning, the door just started banging. I was starting to get scared. It's 2 in the morning. What's happening? And Jankinath walks in. And he's like, Kunal, and I'm like, Chico. Then he starts to tell me this story. And he's like, my mom and dad, they were at the airport. And I just told them now that I'm not coming back to London with them and I'll just come here. He literally told them at the airport. He's like, yeah, I told them at the airport. We kind of spent the whole, I mean, the rest of the night, we missed Mangalarti. We just were talking. We kept thinking we'll fall asleep, but then we ended up just talking for a long time. And that trip in 2007 was so interesting because what I realized that what Jankinath's main prominent factor in his consciousness at that time was, who's my guru? Two things, who's my guru and should I be a brahmachari or should I be a grihastha? Whenever you see a senior devotee, that was like, hey, should I be a brahmachari or shall I get married? That was like, it's like before they even said, Hari Bol, how are you? That was the next thing he kind of said. And then that pursuit for a spiritual master was very interesting. I noticed we went to Ujjain because it was His Holiness Bhakti Charan Maharaj's Vyasa Puja coming up a few days later. So we went to Ujjain. I said, I'm going to Ujjain. I think the next day I said, I'm going to Ujjain. I'm like, why don't you come? And he's like, yes, adventure. So we went to Ujjain, and before I knew it, he was upstairs serving Maharaj in his personal quarters. I'm like, how did you get up there? I'm for years. Maharaj is still waving at me out the window. And that was Jankinath. Any devotee who'd see him, they'd become so attracted to his innocence, his enthusiasm, his love for life, and his love for others. And he was serving Maharaj, Bhakti Charan Maharaj during that week, during the Ujjain retreat. And then we carried on our sabbatical. He met His Holiness Indrajumna Maharaj. And it was so funny because, let's say this was the seat Indrajumna Maharaj would be sitting, and Jankinath would love to do personal service. So he'd get the fan to fan Maharaj, but then Jankinath would be wearing really eccentric t-shirts with his dhoti. So everyone would say to Jankinath, wear a coat that service. But the thing about Jankinath, he was so individual, so unique, and everyone loved him because he was so happy to express who he was. And he didn't have to hide, he didn't have to pretend to be a devotee. He was naturally a devotee. He was naturally a Vaishnava in his way, in his unique style. He didn't, like Chandramouli Maharaj just said, no one can copy him because he was so unique. And then as time went by, he met, I remember him starting to associate with His Holiness Chandramouli Swami. And it was like a match made in heaven, because match made in Golok Vrindavan. Because it was so nice to see Jankinath so surrendered, but also able to just be his jovial, happy, mischievous self around Maharaj. That was what was so exciting, just to see that within him. I remember he was writing the letter. It was around 2009, and he was writing the letter to Maharaj about whether he should now leave the ashram after sabbatical or if he should stay longer. And that was the time Maharaj mentioned that to stay 2 more years. And I remember how he signed off that letter. He was telling me he ended that letter saying that something along the lines of that, like how Arjun surrendered to Krishna, that I don't know what's best for me, please tell me. And in that way, he wrote to Maharaj, I don't know what's best for me, but please tell me what I should do. Because he was that. And as soon as Maharaj said to him to stay for 2 years, he did it. So Jankinath is always, he's always someone that touched me. He's someone that's very, very devotionally, very powerful. I've shared this before, but I think it's just for me to share again. I think there's 2 times that I maybe did some little service for him. And the way the reciprocation came to me really quickly, it was phenomenal. So once in 2011, he was staying in the ashram and he wanted to travel with Chandramouli Maharaj, but he didn't have the Lakshmi. So he didn't tell me he didn't have the Lakshmi. Some devotees were telling me. And so what I did was I told the devotee, it was Ananda Chaitanya, who was his senior in the ashram, and I said, here's the Lakshmi, let Jankinath go on this trip. And so I gave the Lakshmi to Ananda Chaitanya. It was a Sunday morning during Mangal transfer time. And just about an hour later, it was Japa time. The same day, it was Japa time, and I was chanting in the temple room. Actually, I was chanting in the reception room. And one devotee, one of Bhakti Charu Maharaj's servants, came to me and said, come to Radha Desh and you'll be Maharaj's servant for the whole week. I was like, whoa, that was like instant. I helped him do something, and within an hour, Krishna reciprocated. It was just wow. And the other time was that in 2022, when we went to Mayapur, at that time Keshav Maharaj wasn't sure about whether he could get to Mayapur to be there for the ashes ceremony. So he asked me if I could help arrange for Jankinath's family to be in Mayapur and just make sure they're comfortable. And I said, yeah, sure, I can go. That'll be nice. And so we went to Mayapur. We did the ceremony, and straight after the ceremony, somehow what I did was I managed to hold Chandramouli Maharaj's bag. I somehow had his bag. And by having Chandramouli Maharaj's bag, I just ended up following Maharaj the rest of the day. We took a dip in the Ganga. And after a dip in the Ganga, I still had his bag. And because of that bag, I got to still be with Maharaj. And then I followed Maharaj to his room. And then after that, I managed to get more and more association with Maharaj. Later that year, Chandramouli Maharaj gave me second initiation. After that, my wife took initiation from Maharaj. So it just feels like just doing a little bit for Jankinath has limitless reciprocation. Limitless reciprocation. And I'm just so grateful that Jankinath came into my life, and really grateful that, well, I guess I'm still hanging on in Krishna consciousness at the lotus feet of Chandramouli Maharaj because of Jankinath Prabhu. So I'm so grateful to Jankinath Prabhu, and all glories to him and all glories to his service. His grace, Jankinath Prabhu ki.
Thank you so much, Panchaloka Prabhu. Yeah, I think for many of us, myself included, if it wasn't for Jankinath, we might not even still be in Krishna consciousness. I understand we have a very special guest here now from India. So I'd like to just give a brief introduction to His Grace Baladev Prabhu. So Baladev Prabhu is the Regional Secretary Assistant for the GBC in the state of Maharashtra. And he's part of a very famous temple, ISKCON Chowpatty, their temple management. He's involved in very many different services, including youth preaching, and he's coming today to share a few words on Jankinath Prabhu. So could you please have a round of applause for His Grace Baladev?
पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमः. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. So this evening, today, one of the devotees who's organizing this program just told me, come and offering that. So we're busy with the pending exhibition of Haridas Thakur, that we invite all of you for meeting also. And then I was thinking, what should I speak? Because suddenly calling for a program. So immediately I dialed Rajvi Hari Prabhu's number. It was 9:30 p.m. in the night 5. He woke up. I said, Prabhu, I'm supposed to go to Jankinath memeorial and speak something. And he said, yes, last year I was there. So I consider this as a special. I think Radha Gopinath is standing here because Jankinath Prabhu is like a special for all of you in here. It's so special for devotees in Chopra. I mean, if I start speaking, you will not get time to speak. So just keep it small. The most important thing I like to connect with Jankinath Prabhu is that Jankinath was so attached to Shri Radha Gopinath that was on the appearance day of Radha Gopinath or Jankinath disappeared. So that's the connection with Radha Gopinath temple. And there's so many wonderful devotees who have come from Manor for sabbatical in Radha Gopinath temple Chupati. He stayed quite long with us, and we were not even knowing he would make it. Like when I asked him that you want to stay for how long, he said, I don't know. But he joined the Brahmachari training ashram for 1 year, and then he joined the Manor ashram. So I was part of the temple commander there. I asked him whether you able to survive here because our ashram conditions are very, very simple and we're going from a very aristocratic background, have a lot of facilities in the country. But he stayed on for that time, and we were all wondering how he will be able to make it. But he did make it, and we were all thinking that he's so austere, he could make the austere conditions of India in Radha Gopinath temple. But I did not know that he will show us more bigger austerity in terms of his passing away. He went through such a big ordeal and always smiling, right? That was something which I cannot forget. That when I came to know about the news about his terminal cancer, we were shocked. What? Jankinath this year? And then I remember he had come once after he got some treatment once he was so joyful. It was like he was helping us to understand life more. Then we were trying to kind of give him some support. And we had one meeting with Prabhu when just before the Zoom meeting, and between the whole Brahmacharya ashram joined Zoom to meet him, and he was like, when we were joining, we were thinking that we were going to support him, but actually it turned out that he was smiling and said, Prabhu, I am going, please follow me. So this is the greatness of Jankinath, who I am very thankful to Maharaj for taking care of such a nice devotee. And even Maharaj was here, and I Chopani temple, and he gave me the book, Jankinath book, memory. And I picked up the book at 9, 10 o'clock. I finished the book by 12 o'clock at night. I could keep it down. And the next day I told the ashram that there's a book here on Jankinath. So who wants everyone was there and you want to. Only the one book I kept in the library. I said the library, you take care of this notice. So that was the life of Jankinath, was so touching. Even though he was smaller than me, but I could see that he had great devotion. He was so committed to Srila Prabhupada's movement, so committed to Bhaktivedanta Mandir, so committed to his Guru Maharaj, and loved each and every. I never seen him criticize anyone. That's the best part. And he never showed in 1 year of his stay in Brahmacharya Ashram in Chopati that he lacked something. He was miserable. He wanted some help. In fact, he was always ready to help and serve. So that was the specialty of Prabhu, that he was always smiling. Whatever came in his life, good or bad, he took it very positively, and he was always for good. As many of you already mentioned that the best part of his what is humor. He was always humorous. He can be humorous even in difficult situations. And the most difficult situation was his disease, and he was humorous at that time also. Right? And he could connect with the outside world, and even taught great lessons through his disease. He was, as I was told, that he had a very big program with all those from the hospital, right? He had a beautiful program there. So can you imagine now what a smile and yes, we all have to go one day. What a beautiful life he lived, and I hope we would follow his footsteps and able to smile and go to Krishna. Hare Krishna. Gopal ki jai. Jankinath Prabhu ki jai. Chandramali Maharaj ki jai.
Thank you so much, Father. If any of you have spent time in Chopati Temple, you'll know that there's many special devotees there. So to be a special devotee among special devotees, I think says a lot about Jankinath Prabhu. So I'd now like to call His Gracious Brother Damodar Prabhu to say a few words about it.
Krishna, Panchakam, Vishwaka Prasanna Devasya, Uditanamka, Nibhyo Vaishnavagyo, Namo Namaha. 5 minutes? Is that kind of 10 minutes? Okay. Just one point that came to my mind when Maharaj was speaking about you telling him to not be your personal servant anymore and to go and preach. Because when you told him that, maybe the week following that, I remember speaking to him, and he said, I think Chanamoli Maharaj divorced me. You understood the spirit behind it, but he was, as you mentioned, he was so touched to serving you. And I was thinking that's such actually an incredible thing that a spiritual master, it was a sacrifice for you because he understood everything, you know, he knew how he knew the works, he knew, and for you then to find somebody else and retrain, it's a real headache. So the fact that you saw that Jankinath had potential in other ways, and you sacrificed your comfort to give the world Jankinath says a lot about you, Maharaj. So we're very grateful because all of us are recipients of basically what you enabled him to do. So thank you, Maharaj, for doing that and seeing that kind of foresight. I was with Jankinath Prabhu when he left his body, but I don't think I'll speak about that. I just wanted to share just a few points. Basically, I think we all felt in the last year at least that his spiritual depth was like parabolic in the last year. You know, he just, as everybody's mentioned, he didn't waste time, and he took cancer as an opportunity to be able to really intensify his Krishna consciousness. And I first met Jankinath. He was actually one of the first devotees I met when I came to Krishna consciousness. He didn't look like that. He looked like some of these pictures we saw with crazy hair and loud t-shirts. And he was in Trafalgar Square. And I just come to Krishna consciousness maybe a couple of months before. And I went to Rath Yatra, and you get to Trafalgar Square and you see the festival site ahead of you. And Jankinath was there giving out flyers from Panavasena. And from a distance, I could see he looked a bit crazy because he had crazy hair. He was also not jumping on them, but basically just trying to say, you can come to this event. And I was shy and I didn't know devotees, so I wanted to, you know, when you see someone that's a bit off, you kind of strategically plan how to get around them. And you're not going to see one of those Hare Krishna book distributors. You do the same thing, try to. So I planned that I want to go around the site and see what it's like, but I want to avoid that crazy guy over there. So he was engaged with talking with some people, so I thought that's my chance now to. And as I literally went past him, he was talking to people, he left those people and jumped on me. And he said, I've been waiting for, you know, the classic JD thing, you know, you're the guy that I've been waiting for, and, you know, where have you been? And I looked at him like, again, like, you really are crazy. And he said, you look like a cool guy, and, you know, we have these events in Harrow called Harrow Jamming, and so all the cool people in Harrow go. And I was thinking, cool people in Harrow, like, drug dealers in Harrow, I look like cool people in Harrow. Anyway, it was so convincing that you have to go to this program. But I went to this program. That was the way I basically found my identity in Krishna consciousness. So it started 15, 16 years ago, and I'm so grateful. I think in the last year, I don't think many of us really understood how serious his cancer was, and he made a real point of not telling us. He really tried to downplay it. And a couple of months before he left the world, he came back to Masi and Kaka's house in Stonebridge, and it was locked down. And we lived in Wembley at that time, me and my wife. And so we're basically the only devotees nearby. It's not really that close, Stonebridge and Wembley. There's Monk's Park in the middle. Monk's Park is the dodgiest place ever. I don't even know about Monk's Park, but it's all based on monks, which is ironic. And he would just, he'd want to, you know, he'd need a break and get out, go for a walk, come and see us. But you'd have to walk through Monk's Park. And so he'd just turn up, and he wouldn't wear dhoti kurta, which I have a go at him about usually, but he'd just wear a hoodie, and he looked like E.T., you know, like just with a hood over. I'm looking out my window in Wembley, thinking, what's this character, like just walking outside our house, like he was trying to finish his rounds, but he didn't have his speed bag, his hand was in his pocket on a clicker. So I think there's just a weird guy in a trackie and in a hood just circling outside my house. And I'm ready to call the police, because when you see things like that in Wembley, you don't wait for something to happen. Luckily, I then recognized it's Jankinath, so I went out and said, what the hell are you doing, man? Oh, ring the bell or message me that you're coming. So that became like a series of unannounced events, and those unannounced events were the best 3-4 months of my life. Became, yeah, because they were really exclusive devotees basically that you could come. And in that time, I realized that he was getting much more serious and more serious and more serious. Like in the beginning, he just talked about, like I remember him coming over and he really wanted to know about the royal family. He spent an hour Googling the royal family and figuring out the whole family tree. I mean, you know, he wants to do it, so you do it. And then like a couple of weeks later, he's like, Radha Damana, I can't understand. Why is Krishna merciful to some people and not merciful to other people? So then we try to figure that out, you know? So like, as the weeks are going by, his lens is getting, you know, much more narrow and narrow. And even like, I remember asking, Radha Damana, what do you think your Swarup is? You know, JD, you need to chill out, because, you know, there's a lot of things that you would ordinarily talk about. But one thing he said to me was, don't wait to have cancer before you have a relationship with Krishna. That was a really profound thing, because, you know, it's natural, right? Life takes over, and we think we'll do something later, we'll coast, we'll do our sadhana with food. I don't have to put much more effort into it. But Jamie said, don't wait till you have cancer to have a relationship with Krishna. One other thing that was amazing was that most brahmacharis, or even devotees, when they come to the movement, they tend not to handle the family dynamic properly, you know, because the family are not so happy they become devotees, especially if you become a brahmachari. But Jankinath showed that how you can be a really serious devotee and also have a wonderful relationship with your family. And he loved his family. We used to have these calls. I don't know, Bhagavad, when he was having calls with Kesha Maharaj about the CC, and then he'd call us straight after to tell us what they were speaking about. And most of those calls featured him and also his nieces, which was Sia, and, you know, like, just like pulling at him and like slapping him, and, you know, like, here you love them so much. And that's such a wonderful thing that, you know, devotees, we don't tend to have healthy relationships with families, but Jankinath showed that how you can. You should take them along for the ride as well. So I'll just wrap up, but I was meditating on, like we all said, that I don't think we knew who Jankinath was until it was too late. He really, and I think he hit it. I think there was that depth there for sure, but he hit it, because at least for us, we've known it for so long, and we're kids basically. We don't take cases so seriously. But in those final weeks and months, it was almost impossible for him to hide, because he was stripping the layers of his material identity. And so I was reading a purport by Prabhupada about, you know, what is a pure devotee? And everything that I was reading, it was ticking JD. Like, one of the things that Prabhupada says in his purport to 1213 is, a pure devotee is never disturbed by any circumstances. This, you know, JD was exemplary in that he never complained about anything. He just tolerated everything. One time I remember actually, when the pain was getting pretty bad in those last few days, I was staying in the annex, and as I was coming downstairs, I could hear, like, because he lost his voice, but I could hear some whispering coming from his room. And as I sort of peered into his room, I could see that he was sat up with this big picture of Radha in front of him, and he was having a conversation with Radha, which was quite profound. So he was showing things like that, and it was like a conversation. He was kind of saying something, then pausing as if he then had a response, and then continuing again, which was, you know, I kind of left him too. I didn't want to go into the room, but that really showed that in those last few days, Krishna was really reaching out to him and giving him that relationship. Another thing that he says in the purport is that he's not envious of everyone, which Maharaj pointed out, and I think we've all experienced that. There's very, very few people in our life that we can say they just want the best for us, regardless of what their circumstances are. Which I think you can tell them everything you've achieved, so happy for you. It wouldn't make you feel like you had to filter it, or that he would be envious. So that was a very quality that we don't see so often. And then a pure devotee does not attach much importance to the peace and trouble pertaining to the body. And again, we know that he exemplified that. He's free from the conception of false ego and is equipoise, both in happiness and distress. This one I'm not sure about, because Jankinath was happy in happy moments and happy also in distress. So I'm not sure if that means he's equipoise. But he was he was just that same happy, smiling person in both circumstances. He's tolerant and he's satisfied with whatever comes. And he's a completely perfect mystic because he's fixing the instructions you see from the spiritual master. And Jankinath was very mystical, not just because of his magic, but he had a very mystical side to him. And that mystical side came out a lot in that last 24 hours when we were in the hospital. And as Marge mentioned, how he left his body. Actually, his eyes were not closed, they were the opposite. He looked like Jagannath. His eyes were huge. They were popping out of his face practically. And he had this huge smile on his face. So I just think of Jagannath because that's actually what he looked like. And it was scary because there was only one position that would give him some relief, and that was basically all the way down and forward, which is a really awkward position for most of us. And in those last 10 minutes, and he couldn't, at that point, even if he wanted to move his arm, I'd have to move it very incrementally because the pain was so intense. So for him to get up by himself with no aid, no kind of quenching of pain, with a smile on his face, what else could it be other than Krishna taking that pain away from him? So anyway, so much can be said about Jankinath, and I think one thing that I'm extremely grateful for, Prabhupada said we shouldn't be like the Christians in the sense of pointing to Jesus Christ, that he's a pure devotee. We should all try to become pure devotees. That's the proof that this process works. So I think we can all be grateful for the fact that we have a pure devotee in our midst. And he made it look really easy. So it gives us some hope that maybe you can try and follow his footsteps. So thank you to everybody. And all glory to Jankinath Prabhu. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you so much, Brother Damodar Prabhu. There's so much to say. It's not often, for those of you who know me, that I'm left speechless, but as he was speaking, I almost am lost for words because of so many great qualities that Jankinath Prabhu was demonstrating. But one in particular, which I think was why he was so attractive, is that he, as Radha Damodar Prabhu was speaking, I was thinking he didn't have any ulterior motives. When someone comes up to you and speaks to you, they usually want something. But Jankinath, he didn't want anything from you. He always wanted to give. So thank you so much, Prabhu. I believe that we're now going to conclude with a video, and then we'll wrap up with a short kirtan and then a chant.
One thing I do want to share with devotees is that, I think all of us are going through different challenges, different levels of the challenge. And I'm sure devotees have different views. But this is just a reminder, this world, the nature is that it's a dangerous place, it's not a place for us to hang around. And it's just a good reminder, and it's something I just want to share with devotees, that those who are going through challenges, that these challenging times are actually going to experience this testifying and relish functions. Before I dare actually do that, this journey has been such a challenge, but in a good way. And my realization is that as long as I am absorbed Krishna consciousness, these experiences actually become very blissful. One of my best Krishna consciousness experiences I've been in the past 4 years when I've going through this cancer journey. And mainly it's because I knew the importance of assumption in sadhana, Krishna consciousness, in Krishna love, and really that's been my biggest strength. And it's because of this that I that absorption, hearing, Krishna Bhagavatam is the key. That's the reason why and so we're very fortunate that we get to learn on a daily basis. And that's such a good strength. I was telling you that is the hearing is important every day. I don't hear it live. Interview of strength, it's that vibration when it's my ears, my heart. It's not this, no matter how much the environment. So we're very fortunate, I'm very much in these classes. I have a lot of interaction with most family. You know, sweets, always nice to get affection, realizations. And I think the cake is, it was always nice to get in the conference, the realization, the questions, very deep. So yeah, guys, just want to say thank you so much for all the love and support. I really do all the information that if these other people and I decided to do some bring it up. So yeah, I'm doing well. I think we feel like I to share this. Yeah. And nice. Yeah, I just thought everyone would like to know, so I thought I'd share this. When I was in the hospital, when my symptoms, my cough had popped up, I think it was one of the best in the hospital. And he just shared me this joke. So I did the joke. He said that you see this new movie come out, it's called What's the Nation? I'm like, oh, that's right. This is not about yet. Thank you very much. Next time, don't give up the fight.
We're now coming to the close of the program. I'd just like to say a few thank yous. So first of all, thank you to His Holiness Chandramali Maharaj, to His Grace Baladev Prabhu, Kanchanodra Prabhu, Radha Damodar Prabhu, and then to Vaishnav Saravagna Prabhu and all the team at Bhaktivedanta Mana for facilitating this wonderful event. I'd also like to give a thanks to Hector Manati and the family of Jankinath Prabhu also for organising and doing such a wonderful job. Finally, thank you to each and every person who's come here to celebrate and honour the life of Jankinath Prabhu. And finally, a big thanks to Jankinath Prabhu himself. His Grace Jankinath Prabhu Ki! His Grace Jankinath Prabhu Ki! His Grace Jankinath Prabhu Ki! So, before we conclude, I'd like to call upon Jankinath Gauranga Prabhu, who's just going to have a short announcement regarding some books.
Hare Krishna. So as Maharaj said, Jankinath Prabhu was very enthusiastic with book distribution. So we're concluding the program talking about books and then finally Prashada. So we have this wonderful book, Loving Life and Embracing Death. This is the wonderful journey of our dear Jankinath Prabhu. I'm sure most of you have it. But it would be nice if you can take it and distribute it, because it's a wonderful life, and it's a very inspirational life, and you never know who can be inspired to take on Krishna consciousness through these books. So please come to the table, take it and distribute it. Thank you very much. We also got Maharaj Surabhi Maharaj has just published a very nice book on Krishna's way. This is all about Prabhupada's instructions of how we can go back to national way of living and go back to our teachings and living a simple life and right thinking. So again, Jankinath Prabhu would like distributed books. So many of you might have these books. If not, please take advantage and take these books and distribute this. Maharaj is also an ambassador. Many of you may know or may not know, but Maharaj is an ambassador for the ISKCON Prison Ministry, where he does a lot of preaching in the prisons across the world. This is a part 2 book, Forbidden Voices, where the realizations of the inmates after they come to Krishna consciousness or being in touch with Maharaj through those preaching programs for those devotees who are part of the ISKCON Prison Ministry. And this book shares wonderful realizations of those inmates. And when you're inside the prison, you can't fake it. So there are really deep realizations about how Krishna consciousness have changed their lives. And if you haven't got it, please take it over and distribute them. This is a very, very wonderful book of Maharaj, Daily Drops of Nectar. And these are really nectar drops. These are Maharaj's quotes throughout the lectures between 1994 and 2014 and 2018. And it's basically short quotations categorized in various sections that will help you in your spiritual practices. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Just one more thing. Again, I'm emphasizing because Jankinath Prabhu was a very enthusiastic book distributor. We can show our respect to him today. We can pay homage to him by taking these books and distributing it. Hare Krishna.
I'll conclude with a short kirtan. Hare Krishna.
Brief interlude. This is the dancing kirtan.
Sing. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Let's sing all together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Divine grace, AC Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The son of founder of charity, His divine grace. Srila Prabhupada ki. Sri Radha Gokula Nandaki. Sri Radha Nandishwar. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharaj ki. Sri Gauranga ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Sri Jankinath Prabhu ki. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Glories to the Son of God. Glories to the Son of God. All glories to the Son of God. Glories to Guru and Guru. So the Lord of God is Sarira Vijaya.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining. I'm just going to close the call now. Hari Bol, Hare Krishna. Jankinath Prabhu ki Jai.
Jai.